very warm welcome to you wherever you are in the world. Why should we bother with the opportunist action logic? So, Bill, perhaps it would be really helpful if you could kick us off by just reminding us on the theory about opportunists. What is the opportunist action logic?
Well, one can come at it several different ways, theoretically. Most of you know that the underlying ontology of all this work is a 4 territories of experience view of the world, namely that the outside world is real. What's equally and fundamentally real is my awareness in action, my awareness of my own embodied capacity to say these words to you in one tone or another. The 3rd territory is the capacity for thought and feeling. And the 4th territory is the capacity for post-cognitive consciousness, which can be aware of my thinking, my enacting, and my effects in the outside world all at once. And the opportunist stage is where we're struggling to get control of the outside world. Initially, primarily as kids, we want to ride the bike successfully and not skin our knees repeatedly. So it is a fundamental action logic, can be taken for granted. But it is something that comes at the beginning of every developmental cycle. Personally, you can be moving from achiever to redefining, and you go through a little opportunist substage there, the opportunist substage towards redefining, which is very often where the world stops making sense any longer, and you can't tell what's valuable. It's the beginning of redefining questioning, but can also get stuck right there. And one reason it can get stuck is because in social science, we only have one understanding of power, that power is unilateral, and the opportunist power is unilateral and coercive. The diplomat's unilateral power is charming, we say. The expert's power is logistical. And in social science, you don't go on to mutual forms of power, which I claim are the only ones which can generate personal or organizational transformation. So whether or not you have individuals who are leaders who are personally at the opportunist stage, they probably view the conflict among companies, or if they are political figures across parties or nations, in opportunist terms. And as you all probably are distantly familiar with, at the very least, Thomas Hobbes formulated the first sort of political philosophy of the modern age, and it's based on the notion that power is unilateral, and that the king needs to have all the power, or else there might be civil war and people would get killed. So you want to concentrate unilateral power as much as possible. And so in institutional theory, in social science, political science, and management science, we talk about hard power, which is the opportunist type of power, soft power, which is the diplomat type of power, and smart power, which is the experts type of power. So it's only those early stages of power that are recognized in social science, and therefore they make a big difference in political and national relations.
Niklas, if I might turn to you now, one of the things I love about your work, Niklas, is that you really embrace the positives about the opportunist action logic. And so I just wondered if you might just speak to, what do you see are the positives of this action logic, and how do you get people to embrace it?
We see the opportunist as a core in each and every one of us, really caring for our basic needs, caring for keeping me safe. And once my inner opportunist gets threatened, and I haven't embraced it, usually our experience is it will get active, but from the subconscious. And since that's subconscious, I stand chanceless to meet it, to embrace it, to listen to it, until I find myself screaming at my kids for not listening. But when we work with the positives, with embracing the opportunist, and start to grow a dialogue, I would say, the inner dialogue with my inner opportunist, I get sensitive to when do I feel threatened, and I can act before I get triggered. Continuously, it helps us to get aware and pay attention to situations where we feel threatened, where we don't feel safe, or when we feel trapped or caged, not fully in our own freedom to move. So working with an integrative approach helps us to gain access to more of who we are as we see it. There is a bit of resistance at first, because it's viewed as something not good. But usually after a few hours, often in meditative practices and guided visualizations, to really experience and meet the opportunist and feel the gifts and the suffering when we don't acknowledge it, a curiosity is awakened. And beautiful dialogue on how the opportunist cares for us often arise, and yeah, it's beautiful. The shift from I don't want it to wow, I'm so grateful I have it.
What's your advice to help us facilitate, to help us coach, to help us support leaders with this action logic?
An interesting aspect is what we call organizational fear. How do we design structures and consciously or unconsciously grow culture that awakens the fear of the opportunist? And if we do that unconsciously or consciously, we will trigger the opportunist more oftenly. That's an interesting conversation to have with leaders. What do we have in structure and culture that risk triggering our inner opportunist?
Right, along the line that Niklas is saying, you need to create, most of us know this already, we need to create feedback-rich environments. We need to see that those environments don't just give feedback, but allow the opportunity to work it through. We need to offer people leadership opportunities, and you can, there's so many different kinds of leadership that you can have everybody on a team of 6 or 7. Each person can have a leadership role related to that team's functioning. Creating the agenda for a meeting, leading the agenda for a meeting, playing a process role that intervenes when things aren't going the way they were expected, a feedback leader who maybe uses a survey monkey approach to getting some quick feedback at the end of the meeting, and then putting it together for people to have a better next meeting. And those ways of putting people in a visible position and offering them feedback is very important for both offering the opportunist alternatives and also not allowing the opportunist to create an environment of fear. And it is, we probably, most of us know how easy it is for an opportunist to sort of poison the environment, the office environment, and how it requires sometimes a real united front, because the opportunist is running around trying to influence different people to join his conspiracy and being upset about somebody else's alleged conspiracy in the situation. And he plays people, he or she easily plays people against each other. And so it requires like an Alcoholics Anonymous intervention. It requires the whole family to commit and be present for a confrontation with the person. This often happens with an opportunist as well. So those are some ways to start to deal with the opportunist in the negative elements.
How might opportunist be more usefully explored with leaders through the perspectives of self, others, and systems? Drop in the chat some of the thinking, the thoughts, the conversations you were having around this question. So Sue's put up, seeing action logics as rings of tree, like VMI do, so that opportunist is at the core or the heart of the tree and gets integrated in more and more wisdom as we grow and mature. Interesting. I think that correlates with what you were talking about, Niklas. If quite a good percentage of executive leaders are known to be narcissists, how come they don't show up as opportunist? Or are they actually far further developed, but more often triggered by opportunist? I love that question. That is a juicy question, and it's important for us.
Well, of course, an opportunist doesn't have much reason for answering one of our questionnaires. There's no immediate gain in doing so. So, you know, I think it'd be unlikely for them to allow themselves to be that vulnerable as to answer something like this. So again, that's one reason why they don't show up. They like to get everybody else to answer the questionnaires, but not them.
The need to see the covert, unacknowledged opportunist in the daily compromises we make, driving a gas-powered car, for example.
I'd love to just highlight your reflections, Sue. Later action logic accessing the opportunist as a part of embracing our shadow and finding the gifts. That's very much how we see it. We can't really grow the light without touching the darkness and grow that as well. Embracing that darkness in love can integrate it and become power. And that's a way to really dive deep into, oh, what's there for me that I don't want to meet, and dare to embrace it.
I know, Niklas, you do sometimes use embodiment in this, and I'm just curious, what shapes does the opportunist show up as in terms of embodiment?
We held a half-day practice using embodiment yesterday. We try not to direct the shapes, but we try to create a vision of the atmosphere, triggering the opportunist, creating the fear, creating the caged feeling of being stuck, being trapped, and let people react to whatever is awakened in them. And that's a beautiful way to get in contact with basically all your inner action logics. what we see in the embodiments are typically fearful positions, forceful, getting in touch with fear, with anger, with rage, or desperation, and being able to do that and be with that is a beautiful healing process.
Responding to intense narcissism or opportunism in our when it comes from above in a hierarchy. Oh, what you said, that transparency is actually limited by the differences in action logic, that made a big light bulb go on in my head.
How do you see this as impacting opportunist leadership? It seems that with so many crises, centralization is just, or power politics is not possible because it's not solving the many problems around. So again, just the question is, in this environment that we're living, that is affecting everything, governments and organizations and people, because there are many moves, people working from home and diversity and intergenerational technology, all of this, how is it impacting for an opportunist leadership? Maybe the whole thing is moving it upwards because it's just needed. It doesn't work. An opportunist leader, it's not for the moment.
That might depend on the level of fear and the maturity of the leaders as such.
We don't tend to hear people talking about opportunists particularly, and yet it is something that is there within us all and is in wider society. So we wanted to give it some space for us to consider it, to explore it together. This has probably been the longest session I've been in on the subject of opportunist.
I think it's central because I think, generally speaking, in ourselves and in society in general, the opportunist is disowned. And unless we can embrace it within ourselves and society and bring it into the mainstream, we're deluded. We're fooling ourselves. You know, and one of the things I mentioned in the conversation I had in my group was perhaps it is more important in development to go backwards, to go to earlier stages, to embrace our earlier stages, and to rebuild and develop what was never developed when our parents and our teachers were accelerating us through impulsive and opportunist into something called socialized.
That, Nick, to comment on that, that is the core of how we run our transformative leadership programs. Go inwards and explore and really embrace the earlier stages as a foundation for even having the possibility of exploring yourself more fully.
I need to start drawing this to an end, but I'm sad to be doing that. I have to confess, I didn't anticipate as rich a discussion as we've had on this topic. And I'm maybe that says something, well, certainly about me, but about this topic as well. It is rich and it's a powerful action logic that we need to be giving more attention to. That's it. So I just want to thank Sarah and Alison for production. I want to thank Bill and Niklas for their valuable contribution, and for all of you for such a rich conversation and for having a lot of fun with us. Have a great day.